Wack 100 has spent years calling other rappers snitches. He's accused 21 Savage, Gunna, BG, and countless others of working with law enforcement. Every time someone gets arrested or takes a plea, Wack's the first one online, talking loud and pointing fingers, but now everything's flipped. A leaked wiretap, allegedly released by 21 Savage, just put Wack in the hot seat, and what people heard was enough to raise serious questions. Then came the real shocker, a quick flash of what looked like a police badge in Wack's wallet. Add that to a federal gun case that mysteriously disappeared, and now the rumors are louder than ever. Was Wack 100 working with the feds this whole time? Because if that's true, this isn't just about one leaked audio clip. It means the man who built his image on exposing snitches might have been the biggest one of all. The leak hit fast, and it hit hard. A private wiretap recording tied to 21 Savage suddenly made its way online, and people were quick to say it wasn't leaked by accident. According to multiple sources, 21 leaked it himself. No interviews, no warnings, just silence, followed by the drop. For years, Wack 100 had gone after 21 Savage publicly. He accused him of working with ICE to clean up his immigration case. He dragged his name into the YSL situation. He called him a snitch more than once, and always did it loud enough for everyone to hear. But 21 didn't respond. He kept quiet, said nothing, and stayed out of the drama. Until now, this wiretap wasn't just about getting even, it was about flipping the narrative. Wack had built his whole reputation on exposing others, but one audio clip turned the spotlight back on him, and suddenly, the same people who backed Wack started asking if he was hiding something. The wiretap made people listen differently. What started as a shot at 21 ended with people digging into Wack's past, old cases, old connections, and things that never made sense. And just like that, the story shifted. Now it wasn't about whether 21 had snitched, it was about whether Wack 100 had been playing both sides from the very beginning. And that's when people started looking into a gun case from 2005, a case that should have ended Wack's career, but mysteriously disappeared. Back in 2005, Wack 100 and his brother were pulled over in Texas. Nothing unusual at first, just a speeding stop. But when the cops asked to search the car, Wack said no. That's when they brought in the K9 unit. The dog sniffed out 3 loaded firearms in the vehicle, a shotgun, a rifle, and a pistol, all illegal. And here's the catch. Both Wack and his brother were already convicted felons at the time. That means federal time. No debates, no plea deals. You get caught with weapons like that as a felon, you're going away. But somehow, Wack didn't. Instead of getting locked up, he made bail and flew back to LA within days. And then, complete silence. No trial, no updates. 2 years later, the entire case was dismissed, just like that. But here's what really set off alarms. The reason the case was dropped wasn't lack of evidence or a technical error. It was dismissed in the interest of justice. That's a phrase that usually shows up when someone cooperates. Wack later claimed the search was illegal, and that's why the charges disappeared, but court records say otherwise. There's no mention of an illegal search, no suppression of evidence, nothing. Just a quiet dismissal, no explanation, no questions. For most people, that kind of case would ruin everything. It would have been all over the media, it would have followed them for life. But for Wack, it just vanished, and he never missed a beat. That's when people started asking, how does a convicted felon walk away from a federal gun case that strong? And the more people looked, the more they realized this wasn't the only time Wack managed to stay one step ahead of the law. The 2005 gun case wasn't just a fluke, it was the start of a pattern. Over the years, Wack 100 has surrounded himself with some of the most high-profile names in street culture and hip-hop. Suge Knight, Big U, people tied to serious legal trouble, gang investigations, and federal probes. Yet somehow, every time things got hot, Wack stayed untouched. When Suge Knight's crew got hit with wiretaps and injunctions, Wack's name was nowhere in the paperwork. When the feds came down on people close to him, Wack didn't even get questioned. No raids, no charges, not even a mention. And that's not normal. If you're moving in those circles and consistently close to people catching federal cases, it usually catches up with you. But for Wack, it never does. He's always in the conversation, but never in the courtroom. People started to notice. It wasn't just the gun case. It was the timing, the silence, the way he always seemed to know when something was about to go down. Wack's reputation made him look like a street soldier, but his movements told a different story. It was almost like he had a layer of protection that no one could explain, like someone was making sure he never got caught in the crossfire. That raised a new question. Was Wack being protected by something or someone? Because there's a difference between getting lucky once and walking away clean every single time. And nothing proved that more than the moment he sent a warning before the feds even knocked on Big U's door. In 2023, just before Big U got hit with RICO charges, something strange happened behind the scenes. Wack 100 allegedly reached out to Big U's wife with a warning, a private message that simply said, 911, he needs to leave. Bad. All caps, urgent, no explanation, no context, just pure panic. At first, it sounded like Wack was trying to help, but when you look closer, it starts to feel more like a setup than a favor. Because Wack knew about the raid before it happened, before the paperwork dropped, before the press got wind of anything. The timing was too perfect, and the message? It wasn't followed up with anything helpful. No details, no location, no strategy. Just a vague alert, like he wanted to be on record saying something, without actually doing anything to stop it. Then, after Big U got arrested, Wack flipped the script. He went online claiming Big U was the one talking to the feds. He accused him of using a government-issued BlackBerry to communicate with law enforcement. And while people were still trying to make sense of what just happened, Wack was already controlling the narrative. But the deeper people dug, the more it looked like Wack was playing both sides. 1 minute, he's warning someone about a raid. The next, he's using that same raid to discredit them. That's not loyalty, that's chess. And the more it kept happening, the more it started to look like Wack wasn't just part of the drama, he was helping script it. People began to wonder, was Wack giving warnings just to cover himself? Or worse, was he helping set the stage for these takedowns and then spinning the story after? And then came the moment that made everyone stop and question everything. A split-second flash of something he never meant for the world to see. It was quick, maybe half a second, but it was enough. In a recent video, Wack 100 opened his wallet and something caught the camera's eye. A badge, just long enough to raise eyebrows, but short enough to make people wonder if they really saw what they thought they saw. But screenshots don't lie. Viewers paused, zoomed in, rewatched the footage, and there it was, clear as day. Something that looked a lot like a police ID sitting right inside Wack's wallet. Not a prop, not a novelty, a real badge. That moment sent the internet into overdrive. Was Wack law enforcement? Was he working undercover? Was this just another twist in a long string of unexplained protection? For a guy who spends all his time calling people snitches, the idea that he might be tied to the police wasn't just ironic, it was explosive. Wack tried to brush it off, of course. He made jokes, downplayed the footage. But the damage was done. The image of that badge didn't just go viral, it dragged everything else from his past right back into the spotlight. The gun case, the federal silence, the early warnings before raids. Suddenly, it all seemed connected. That badge was more than just a mystery. It was a symbol of everything Wack had denied for years. And to many, it looked like the mask had finally slipped. It wasn't just about a leaked audio anymore. This was about trust, image, identity, and a growing theory that Wack 100 hadn't just been loud, he had been protected, possibly even active on both sides of the game. But if the badge was the turning point, what came next raised even more red flags, especially when people started connecting it to Clubhouse and how fast people caught cases after talking to Wack. But if the badge was the turning point, what came next raised even more red flags, especially when people started connecting it to Clubhouse and how fast people caught cases after talking to Wack. By now, everyone knows Wack 100 runs Clubhouse like it's his personal courtroom. He dominates rooms, talks over people, records conversations, and somehow always walks away clean. But lately, people have started noticing a dangerous pattern, a pattern that makes it look less like debate and more like setup. Multiple rappers who got on Clubhouse with Wack ended up catching charges not long after. Loose Cannon, for example, spoke recklessly on a call, then suddenly found himself jammed up. Happened fast, too fast to feel like coincidence, and here's the part that makes it all look calculated. Wack records nearly every conversation. That's not normal street behavior. Real ones don't record their people, not unless they plan to use it later or hand it over. Wack, on the other hand, keeps his finger on the record button like he's building a case file. Even more suspicious, he always seems to drop clips at just the right moment, right when someone else is under fire, right when attention's off him. It's like a magician's trick. Misdirection, drama, distraction. But now, people are asking the real question. Was Wack using Clubhouse to bait people? Did he stir the pot on purpose? Get them angry, talking wild? Then sit back and let the consequences hit? Because that's not content. That's a trap. And when someone keeps dodging heat while the people around them keep getting burned, you have to wonder, was it all part of the plan? Especially when you realize Wack's been accusing everyone else of snitching for years, but never once backed it up with real proof. Wack 100 has built his brand on calling people rats. Gunna, BG, 21 Savage, he's gone after all of them, claiming they cooperated, folded, or made deals behind closed doors. Every time someone's name came up in court or a plea deal hit the news, Wack was already shouting that they snitched. But here's the problem. He never shows receipts. When Wack went after Gunna, he claimed he had a 2-hour interrogation video. He even threatened to leak it if Gunna didn't confess. But that video? It never surfaced. It was just talk. Then he came for BG, someone who already did over a decade behind bars. Wack claimed BG cut a deal. But BG's former cellmate spoke up, saying BG stood tall and never cooperated. Again, no paperwork, no proof, just more noise. The pattern became clear. Wack makes big accusations without ever backing them up, and that makes people wonder, why is he so focused on everyone else? Why does he keep pointing fingers, making claims, starting fires, all without any solid evidence? Because when someone screams snitch over and over, but never brings receipts, it starts to feel like deflection, a way to keep the heat off themselves, especially when that same person's own federal gun case mysteriously vanished. When they seem to know about raids before they happen, when they're recording rappers and leaking clips like it's part of a strategy. It's one thing to call out rats, it's another thing to play the streets while acting like law enforcement. And if everything really is connected, from the wiretap to the badge to the missing court records, then Wack 100 might not just be loud, he might be dangerous. At this point, the pattern is hard to ignore. A federal gun case that disappeared without a trace, a warning sent before a RICO raid, a badge caught on camera. Clubhouse calls that end in indictments, and a loud, non-stop campaign accusing others of snitching without ever showing proof. Wack 100 has always positioned himself as the street's truth teller, the guy who knows what's real and what's fake, the one who isn't afraid to call it out. But what if that was all just a cover, a distraction? Because the more people connect the dots, the more it looks like he's been hiding in plain sight. Think about it. How does someone stay so close to chaos and never get touched? How do federal charges vanish for a convicted felon found with 3 loaded weapons? Why does he always seem to know what's coming before the rest of the world does? And why, after all these years, has no one ever produced a single piece of paper proving any of his claims? People are starting to see through the noise. They're realizing that the man who shouts the loudest might just be the one trying hardest to keep the attention off himself. And when you look at Wack 100's entire timeline, from 2005 to now, it doesn't look like luck. It looks like strategy. If Wack really was working with law enforcement all along, then this changes everything. Every conversation, every accusation, every clip and call and controversy. It means the same man who was shaping narratives, stirring drama, and setting the tone for the culture might have been wired from the beginning. That's not just messy. That's betrayal on a whole different level. And if it turns out to be true, then this won't just be another online scandal. It'll be one of the biggest deceptions hip-hop has ever seen. Because when the person who claims to know everyone's secrets turns out to be hiding the biggest one of all, nobody's safe, not even Wack,